I think the word professionalism has changed, hasn't it, over recent years? And it's not kind of like so strict, kind of suit and tie, done up top button approach anymore, particularly on LinkedIn. It is much more personable and human to human. And with brands, people want to know the people behind the brand, whether it's the leaders, whether it's the subject matter experts, the people that they're talking to day to day. I think whichever approach you want to take, and sometimes humour works, sometimes humour really isn't appropriate. You can still entertain and inspire. It's kind of finding your own tone of voice. And then most importantly, I think it's about being consistent with it so that people know your style, they know your approach, they know your authority and your credibility. Because I don't think you can switch around these things. You can't be, this person on a Monday morning brand and then something else on a Friday afternoon. You've kind of got to pick your style and just keep showing up. And the people that resonates with will be the people that it's relevant for because you've understood your audience.
So hi guys, this is Eamon and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Feed by Social Champ. And today we have Laun with us, who is a marketing trainer and also a workshop facilitator. And we have a very, very interesting topic to talk about, that is how to make your social media content more engaging. So all over to you, Laun. Can you tell me about what is actually engaging content for people on social media?
I think this is such a big question right now. And I think it's important to think that engagement is about more than likes and comments and shares. But it's quite difficult to kind of shift our mindset on that because that's how we've always seen engagement on social media, how our metrics have always appeared. But over the last 2, maybe even 3 years, things have shifted. And it's shifted in terms of social media user behavior in that they are still engaging. We know that they're still seeing our content and they are recognizing the content, but they are engaging more in a private way behind the scenes. It's now much more about sharing a post with your friends, with your peers, with your colleagues in maybe a private WhatsApp group or a private DM versus the public commenting and liking. So there is a shift, and I think it's important for marketers to understand that shift. And the platforms are telling us this is happening because they've changed the metrics to align with us. And we really need to tell our users what we expect from them. We need to tell them how to engage with us now in 2026 versus a few years ago.
That's amazing. So, since engagement is actually so important in social media, a lot of brands and a lot of creators, I've seen that they're running after bots, which is actually very sad. So, what do you have to say about that? Getting fake engagement and all that engagement paid, how does that actually affect your brand?
Yeah. Again, fake engagement, that feels like it's old social media, kind of buying fake followers to inflate your numbers, fake engagement. It has a couple of implications, really. One, they're never going to buy from you if they don't exist. So it's not going to have any positive impact on your business. But on the flip side, because I know we're going to be talking about psychology, having those kind of numbers visible does kind of have an impact and an influence, almost in a incorrect social proof way. If someone sees that there's a lot of likes on there, they might be inclined to like the post as well. So there is a challenge here in that, the fake numbers could support real engagement. But at the end of the day, I think people do find out when things aren't authentic and genuine, and that
Yeah.
can be damaging.
That's amazing. So a lot of brands also believe that they know the psychology of their customers. But what do you think? What are the blind spots that brands have not yet investigated when it comes to their customers and their engagement?
I mean, this is absolute kind of marketing fundamentals 101. Understand your customer, know that it's not everyone. And as you can probably tell from my backdrop, I read a lot of books. And for me, a lot of books will jump past this topic really quickly. They'll say, know your audience, and then move on. And I think it's really difficult for people to truly understand their audience if they don't spend the time on it. So I think that's the element that's really key, is like taking the time to understand who you're talking to, who's buying, who's influencing, and then create the content that they're going to find interesting.
That's great. So you've also written a book, Marketing and Psychology, and over there I've seen that you've talked about the ABC framework. So can you actually explain to our audience and all the marketers that are watching that what is the ABC framework and how they can actually implement it?
Yeah, so the ABC framework or approach, as we've called it, is part of the book that I've co-written with Tom Bowden Green, which takes over 400 psychology theories and then applies them to marketing with real life examples or questions that you should consider. And really, the ABC came towards the end of our writing when we realised we've got so many theories here. How can a marketer make sense of this and make this usable? So we stood in front of a whiteboard with lots of post-it notes and literally reordered all the theories that we had. They were in groups to a certain extent, but we reordered them into A, which is for audience, B, which is for brand perception, and C, which is for choice evaluation, into a mnemonic that's easy for people to understand, but also into a visual funnel, which again marketers are very familiar with. So ABC is really fundamentally starting with your audience, their personality traits, what you need to know about them, then moving on to how you can start to impact them in terms of their memory, their know, like, and trust, all those kind of factors that might make a difference in terms of understanding your brand. And then the final point towards the end of the funnel, when you're looking for people to take an action, what's going to help them make a choice between you and another brand or an alternative product. So it was a framework to put the theories into a structure that people could find usable.
So you talked about user trust as well and customer trust as well. So how do you think that brands can actually create this trust, especially on social media online?
I think it's really important that even though social media feels easy, it feels accessible, it feels low entry cost, that actually building a brand takes time. And you're not going to achieve success with one post, or if you do have a post that goes viral, that can skew things long term. Trust takes time to build. Trust takes time to earn as well, and for people to get to know you, understand what you do, how you can support them, who else has worked with them. So it very much is a long term, keep posting, keep being visible activity versus a kind of a one hit post.
So a lot of people, they also talk about the number of likes and the number of comments that brands are getting. But we've also seen this trend where people say that the number of followers, like, comments, they no longer matter. Because right now we're talking about meaningful conversations as well. So do you also think the same? Do you think that likes and comments, the number of likes and comments is actually not a very important metrics anymore in social media?
I think this is a challenge for a couple of reasons. That I agree, I don't think it's as important as it used to be because we now have more meaningful metrics that give us more alignment with our business goals and what we're trying to achieve. However, the challenge is internal conversations around metrics, and that likes and followers is potentially something people understand and will ask for. And if marketers keep responding with that data to maybe their leadership team, we keep having those conversations. The challenge around likes and follows and comments, for example, that used to work when our social media feeds were very chronological. It was we were seeing content from the people that we'd chosen to follow. But as we know now, everything is very much AI, algorithmically driven. So we are seeing content that the platforms believe we are interested in. And therefore, that engagement, that visibility is different, and we're measuring it differently, and we should be thinking about impacts, not just outputs as well. But I will share I'm particularly challenged by the kind of follower numbers, because on one hand, we know that that's not quite so important. We don't see everything from the people that we follow. The platforms give us data from non-followers as well. But if we look to the world of influencer marketing, that is still very much based and driven by selecting people depending on the size of their audience, which is number of followers. So on one hand, it's not so important, but in another very much growing area, it is really important. But it also has to be genuine numbers, going back to the kind of the fake point that we made earlier. So I think overall, all of these metrics are available. They are important if you need them to be important, but I think we have to understand the bigger picture of what we're trying to achieve and think about those long-term goals, not necessarily the very quick win numbers.
That's amazing. So right now you also talked about genuine engagement. Since we're talking a lot about having authentic and genuine engagement, a lot of brands, like you said earlier, they do post about virality, and they post a lot of things about trends and all of that, right? And they're able to get that attention-paid engagement as well. But do you think that is short-lived, and brands should now focus more on creating trust with their customers?
I think it's a real balance because we know that there are some posts that are easier for people to engage with.
Yeah.
The lighter content about books, about achievements, about celebrations, and that is useful and valuable. It's all part of the picture. We also all know that we can spend hours on a social media post that we've thought about a lot, is a thought leadership piece, and it just doesn't get, the numbers and the visibility. Um, I'm not saying do one or the other. I think you do need a mix so that people do build up that picture of you long term. I guess it is storytelling, isn't it? Letting people know the fun stuff, the serious stuff, get to know you content. I think needs that mix for the true engagement. It's just not always reflected quite so accurately if you're looking purely at numbers.
Yeah, that's true. So you also talked about professionalism, online on social media as well. So how can actually brands, I'm talking about the businesses, even B2B as well, how do they actually maintain professionalism while also engaging with their audience? Because a lot of people nowadays, if you see online, they're always talking about Gen Z content, humor, and all of that. So in that, a lot of brands lose their personality because it does not suit all of the B2B brands, especially. So how can we actually make sure that we maintain professionalism online?
I think the word professionalism has changed, hasn't it, over recent years? And it's not kind of like so strict, kind of suit and tie, done up top button approach anymore, particularly on LinkedIn. It is much more personable and human to human. And with brands, people want to know the people behind the brand, whether it's the leaders, whether it's the subject matter experts, the people that they're talking to day to day. I think whichever approach you want to take, and sometimes humour works, sometimes humour really isn't appropriate. You can still entertain and inspire. It's kind of finding your own tone of voice. And then, most importantly, I think it's about being consistent with it so that people know your style, they know your approach, they know your authority and your credibility. Because I don't think you can switch around these things. You can't be, this person on a Monday morning brand and then something else on a Friday afternoon. You've kind of got to pick your style and just keep showing up. And the people that resonates with will be the people that it's relevant for because you've understood your audience in that nature.
So you talked about right now about consistency and maintaining your character and your style. So a lot of brands these days they do not have brand books, they don't have brand guidelines because people believe that you can just post anything raw and it somehow works as long as it's authentic as well. So do you think that brand guidelines and brand books are important to maintain consistency, especially?
Yes, anyone that knows me will know, I like a set of processes, I like a set of guidelines, but maybe it's not so rigid anymore. It's not kind of full of do's and don'ts. It's more full of examples and thinking. So let me give you an example of this. This is about do you get involved with a trend or not? And it can't just be a straight no, we don't do trends, or yes, we will do every trend. There's very much a nature now of, what context are we in? What's going on in the world around us? Is this appropriate for us to get involved with? Is it not appropriate for us to get involved with? And that might be different 2 weeks ago as it is tomorrow because of, world events, for example, or something that our people are involved in. So I think guidelines and frameworks are important, but maybe not so rigid because, we do need to adapt and be flexible in the moment. I think what does come into this is having maybe an internal team or support where if you have an idea, you can bounce it off each other. So it's not a single person making that call as to whether you do something or not, but that group should also be representative and diverse as well. So again, it's like, have you got someone from your target audience kind of profile in there? Have you got a mixed opinion and insight in there? So that you have almost like checklists rather than
Yeah.
guidelines.
So how do you actually maintain synergy in your teams? Like you just said that you can have a complete marketing team in which one person can be your target audience and so on. So how do we actually maintain voice in this way? Because I've seen a lot of teams struggle with this. One person sets the tone of the brand and the other person is not able to replicate. So how do you actually maintain that, especially in big marketing teams?
Yeah, I think this is about understanding roles and responsibilities as well within the teams. But quite simply, it could just be a Teams chat, it could be a WhatsApp chat. It's almost like knowing when to do something, like where are your internal flags on something or what's happening. For example, I work with some clients and I see every piece of content that goes out. There are some other clients where I may get a message where there's something that they're concerned about and just need like a second opinion on something. So I think it's about knowing how your team work and who around you can give you that kind of best advice or sense check in the moment.
That's amazing. So how do you actually how what actually questions should brands be asking themselves if they're not getting engagement? Because a lot of brands, especially new ones, they quite struggle with getting engagement because we have a lot of clutter online and every other business is trying to create engagement, they're trying to create posts. We have a lot of content online. So in this, what type of questions should we ask ourselves when we're not getting that amount of engagement?
Yeah. If I start with what I don't want people to do is blame an algorithm or
Okay.
something that they can't control or that they didn't know a certain hack or a trick. Things do change um, in the online world, but more slowly than perhaps people realize. So I would say if something doesn't get the results that you expected, go back to what did you expect, and maybe look at the post and say, we forgot to include a piece of information, or maybe the image didn't resonate with people. Like, go back to what your expectations were and question the post against it. Try not to blame the algorithm, but really think about what's happening to put it into context. Have your competitors launched something really big that day? Is there a big awareness day event going on? Is there something in the world happening? Like, is there something external? And again, I'm not saying that that's an excuse about performance, but it's just trying to give some context, because if you're being asked internally why something didn't perform as well, you've got to kind of think for yourself what the reasons are, and then do go back to the post and say, for example, we put too much in there, we forgot to include the date about an event. Like, just be hypercritical, but then also accept that sometimes there is no reason, and one post, to single out one post is really difficult. So just try and learn from it and do something maybe slightly differently, or go back to something that has worked before with your next piece.
So you talked a lot about, AI as well previously. So in the age of AI, a lot of brands are able to actually create complete replicas of their competitors and they don't have a unique strategy. So do you think this is the right way to actually do marketing, and or do you think that brands should actually have something unique in them, through which they can stand out?
Yes. I mean, this isn't just about AI, is it? Kind of looking at what your competitors are doing and seeing what they're doing. I do think it's important to, one, firstly, know who your competitors are, because not everyone has a clear list or understanding of that. We can all learn from what they're doing, whether they're launching something, whether they're communicating in a certain way, for example, but I don't think we should ever copy them. We should take it as insights, and learn from it and see what we can do differently with our own stamp. AI has almost like amplified that copying to a certain extent, by people prompting, saying, create me a post in the style of, for example. That is starting to get lots of negative feedback. We all see, if we were to scroll through LinkedIn right now, people will be calling out AI content. We will see certain indicators of AI created content that people are now spotting and recognizing. So it's a real challenge that sometimes people don't think that their brand is unique, but it is unique, whether it's their people, their processes, their stage of business. So it's just trying to make sure that you're getting that across. And you can absolutely use AI tools to support you in that. I'm not saying don't use AI, but just humanize, edit the output, put your own stance on something because everyone has their own approach to different things.
Yeah, that's true. That's amazing. So a lot of people also have this debate that marketing degrees are actually not important, and now anyone can actually do marketing. But from the background that you're coming from, you actually have a merge of both academia and industry as well. So do you think marketing degrees and all of the bookish knowledge is also very important to be a successful marketer?
This is always a challenge because everyone obviously comes from the approach that they've taken to their careers, and mine has very much been about academia and learning and continuous development. The thing about marketing is it isn't a regulated profession, so people can and do enter this industry in many different ways from many different avenues, from creative routes, from data routes, from engineering, and the roles in marketing are so diverse now as well. So I don't think there is a clear career path for people. I think it's about people choosing what works for them. And if that is going back to formal study, go back to formal study. If it's reading, if it's watching blogs or events, I think what is important is to find your own learning style, to stay up to date, because this is such a fast paced industry. And choose how you wish to do your career path. Yes, mine is an academic bridge because that's how I like to learn. That's how I like to deliver my training as well. But it doesn't say that it's a right fit for everyone. Marketing is so creative and diverse, and I think that's what makes it a fun industry to collaborate with each other as well.
I agree with that. So just like we're talking about academy and all of that, so do you think that some marketing principles are actually still being followed? Because you talked about, how the industry is changing and every day there's something new in marketing. But do you think there's some certain rules of marketing that are still being followed and they'll always be followed that we should all learn?
Again, because I come from a learning background with this, I started to learn marketing pre almost pre-internet, definitely pre-social media, and definitely pre-AI. And I would always argue that there is a lot of fundamentals that do still work, are still relevant. It's just how we deliver them that is different. So how I would plan advertising campaigns, for example, is still the same, whether it's press or whether it's online. Um, asking the same questions about, what we're trying to achieve and what's the best place, all of those things. But fundamentally, again, comes back to the ABC, understanding our audience, who we're trying to talk to, what they need to know about us, and aligning everything with our goals. So I do think you need to strip back from the tactics, particularly the digital ones, because you can become very focused on which buttons to press and things like that. If you haven't got the fundamentals, the right questions, what you're trying to achieve, doesn't really matter how great your creative is. It's not going to get the results for your business.
That's some amazing advice. So coming back to engagement, do you think that posting is not the only job of a social media manager? Because a lot of people think that social media managers, all they do is create content and then they post. But engagement is also very important. Driving engagement involves a lot of effort. So do you think that engagement on social media platforms is not only likes and comments, there are also other communities where people go out and then they engage with their audience, and that also helps?
Get a room full of social media managers and they'll all say, people think my job is just to, or you're sitting in internal meetings and someone will say,
Yeah.
oh, could you just pop that on social? It has been for a long time such an add-on at the end. And, that's one of the biggest frustrations. And people think it's quick, and briefs are about the number of posts that you do. So, it's getting better, but there's still a lot of work to do around that area in terms of, what does a social media manager do once they've posted? They do need to stay online and see what the comments are. The sentiment of them. Do they need responding to? What is the feedback? But then it's also not just about your own content. It is engaging with others. And if we were to start kind of talk about LinkedIn and kind of personal interactions as well, I spend as much time looking through my newsfeed and commenting and sending DMs as I do kind of my own posts as well. Like it's almost, they need to run in parallel alongside each other. It's not just about posting.
That's amazing. I hope everyone listens to this. Everyone who says that social media managers, they only need to post. I also want to ask that We talked about content clutter online, and I want to ask this from the customer's perspective as well. That there's a lot of clutter online, especially in the age of AI. Every other person is posting content, and how do you think this actually impacts the user engagement? Is engagement actually impacted by the cognitive impact of having so much content online? That is why users just scroll and they do not, comment anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it is about scrolling, isn't it? And I think one of the challenges here is that social media isn't necessarily social as much as
Yeah.
it could be, in that, a lot of users are there to consume rather than post and engage as well. But in terms of like scrolling past, what do we need to do? We need to stand out. So we need to, have a hook to engage people quite quickly, whether that's a question on the screen, be recognizable, whether that's color or format, so that people know who this person is. We have to have a, a consistency to our content where people are almost looking out for you. And if they see you in the scroll and they go, oh, I like their videos, I'm going to watch that one. I learned something last time. I enjoyed that one. Or this person does updates every Tuesday morning. I'm going to make sure I look out for that. So again, it's about visibility, it's about consistency. And if someone finds your content useful for them, they will stop scrolling the next time they see it.
I agree with that. So this brings us at the end of the podcast, Lou. It was wonderful having you. At the end, I'd like you to give one advice to all the marketeers out there who want to actually create engagement on their brands. And at the same time, also tell us about your book as well.
Thank you. I think the one piece of advice will be to just pause and just really think, why am I posting this? What do I want people to take away from this? Am I contributing to knowledge, inspiring someone, or just letting them know what I do, and telling my story? Just really think about, why am I posting this and what value am I adding to my audience and my followers? And if you don't know the answer to that, pause for a bit longer and try and, rework it in there. With my books, so Marketing and Psychology, Understanding Customer Behaviour with the ABC Approach is my latest book. It was published in January. It very much, as I said, taking theory and practice. I have now written 8 books, so I have 2 more coming out later this year. And really, they do all focus around social media, best practice, getting those fundamentals in place. So again, that's what I would encourage your watchers, your marketers to do as well.
Amazing. We all should read your book as well. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. Wonderful having you. Hope you enjoyed as well, Luann.
Thank you so much.